As I stood in the rustic mountain lodge's grand dining hall watching my husband Daniel receive the Family Man of the Year plaque from his beaming father, I felt strangely calm considering what I'd discovered on his Apple Watch just hours earlier. The notification preview that flashed while he was showering read simply, "Missing your touch already. Last night was incredible." It came from his colleague Rebecca, the one he'd insisted was just a work friend for the past 8 months. I smiled as his eyes met mine across the room, my finger hovering over my phone, ready to share his secret with everyone he was desperate to impress. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Olivia Morales, and at 34, I thought I had achieved everything I'd ever wanted. A successful career as a digital security consultant, a beautiful 5-year-old son named Liam, and what I believed was a rock-solid marriage to Daniel, the marketing director at one of Denver's fastest-growing tech companies. My career path hadn't been what Daniel's family expected when we first met. The Morales women traditionally focused on family and philanthropy, not demanding tech careers. But I'd built a reputation protecting high-profile clients from digital threats, working with celebrities, politicians, and corporate executives who needed their private information to stay private. The irony that I couldn't protect my own marriage wasn't lost on me. We had met during graduate school at the University of Colorado when I was finishing my master's in cybersecurity, and he was completing his MBA. Our connection had been immediate, both ambitious, both from close-knit Hispanic families with traditional values, both determined to balance successful careers with a meaningful family life. Our first date had been at a small coffee shop near campus, where we stayed talking until the owner politely kicked us out at closing time. When Daniel proposed after 18 months of dating on a snowy evening at Red Rocks Amphitheater, it felt like the natural next step in a perfectly planned life. "Olivia Ramirez," he had said, kneeling in the snow, "you're the missing piece I've been waiting for. Will you build a life with me?" Daniel came from the prestigious Morales family, whose real estate development company had transformed much of downtown Denver over 3 generations. Their name adorned buildings, parks, and charity wings of hospitals throughout Colorado. His father, Miguel, was the family patriarch, demanding, traditional, and fiercely protective of the Morales name and legacy. At 65, he still ran Morales Developments with an iron grip, expecting his 3 children to uphold the family's reputation in everything they did. The pressure on Daniel to live up to his father's expectations was immense. As the oldest son, he was being groomed to eventually take over the company. Every decision, from which university he attended to which neighborhood we bought our home in, was scrutinized for how it reflected on the family. I had always admired how Daniel handled it with grace, navigating his father's expectations while carving out what seemed like a happy life for us. "We're the perfect team," Daniel would say, pulling me close on those rare evenings when we both finished work early enough to share a glass of wine on our terrace overlooking the mountains. "You keep our digital lives secure, and I make sure our future is bright." I had believed him completely. That was before this year's annual family reunion in Aspen, where the Morales family had a sprawling mountain lodge they'd acquired in the 1980s. The 7-bedroom property with its floor-to-ceiling windows and breathtaking mountain views had been the setting of every major family event for decades. Every summer, relatives from across the country gathered for a week-long celebration of family bonds and achievements. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and 3 generations of Morales success stories all under one roof. This year was especially significant because Daniel was receiving the Family Man of the Year award, an honor his father had created 5 years ago to recognize the family member who best exemplified commitment to traditional values and family unity. Daniel had been working toward this recognition since his younger brother won it last year, volunteering for community events, organizing family gatherings, and making sure we were the picture-perfect family at every Morales function. The irony wasn't lost on me. That morning, as Daniel showered before the award ceremony, his Apple Watch had buzzed repeatedly on the nightstand. We shared a luxurious suite at the lodge, with Liam in the connecting room where Daniel's mother could easily check on him. I normally wouldn't have looked at Daniel's notifications, but the buzzing was persistent, and I worried it might be his mother needing last-minute help with the ceremony preparations. Instead, I saw message previews from Rebecca W. that made my heart stop. Missing your touch already. Last night was incredible. Can't wait until we're in Chicago next week. No interruptions for 3 days. Have you told Olivia about the conference? Yet? I knew Rebecca Winters, Daniel's talented new marketing coordinator who had joined Morales Developments just 8 months ago. 10 years younger than me, with perfect blonde highlights and a Stanford MBA. She came from a wealthy East Coast family with connections Daniel's father appreciated. He had mentioned her name increasingly over the months, always in professional contexts, always with casual indifference. Just a work friend, he'd insisted, when I noticed how often they texted outside office hours. Dad thinks she has potential to help us expand into the New York market. With trembling hands, I picked up the watch. It wasn't locked. Daniel had always trusted me completely, or perhaps he'd simply forgotten that his messages synced across devices. What I found made me feel physically ill. Hundreds of messages, hotel reservations, flight confirmations for trips I thought he'd taken alone for work, and intimate photos no work friend would ever share. The most devastating discovery wasn't the physical betrayal. It was the detailed plans they'd made for their future. Screenshots of apartment listings in Chicago, where Rebecca had family connections. A draft resignation letter from Daniel to the Morales family company, citing creative differences with his father's vision. A carefully calculated timeline for when he would ask for a divorce, conveniently scheduled for after he received his portion of the family's annual profit sharing, just 3 weeks from today. They had even discussed how to position the narrative to minimize his reputation damage, suggesting I was too focused on my career to prioritize family. 8 years of marriage, reduced to a PR problem to be managed. As I scrolled through their conversations, my son Liam appeared in the doorway of our suite, already dressed in the little navy suit Daniel's mother had picked out for him. His dark curls were neatly combed, and he wore the miniature bolo tie that matched his grandfather's, a Morales family tradition. "Mommy, Grandpa says we need to come downstairs soon for Daddy's award," he said, his face bright with excitement, dimples showing. "He says Daddy is the best father in the whole family, and I get to bring him the trophy." I looked at my beautiful son, then at the evidence of betrayal glowing on the watch screen, and made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront Daniel privately, giving him the chance to manage this narrative too. "We'll be right there, sweetheart," I smiled, my mind suddenly clear. "Mommy just needs to check something on Daddy's watch first. Why don't you ask Grandma if there are any more of those chocolate croissants left from breakfast?" As Liam scampered away, I turned my full attention to the watch and my own phone. As a digital security consultant for high-profile clients, I understood how technology worked in ways Daniel never bothered to learn. I knew about the family lodge's state-of-the-art audio-visual system that Miguel had proudly installed last year for business presentations. I knew that Daniel had set up his presentation for the acceptance speech on his cloud account, which was synced to his watch, and I knew exactly how to access that account. In that moment, I knew exactly what I was going to do when Daniel stepped onto the stage to accept his Family Man of the Year award in front of everyone he wanted to impress. His father, his extended family, and the business associates Miguel had invited to witness his son's moment of glory. Sometimes karma needs a little technical assistance, and I was just the woman to provide it. Looking back, the signs had been there for months. Subtle shifts I'd dismissed or rationalized away, The first red flag appeared last November, when Daniel suddenly started going to the gym at 6 a.m. 3 days a week. A dramatic change for a man who had previously treated our home treadmill like an expensive clothes rack. At the time, I'd been thrilled, even encouraging him to buy new workout clothes and a premium fitness watch. "It's about time I got serious about my health," he'd said, kissing me on the forehead. Dad's heart attack last year was a wake-up call. His father's health scare had indeed shaken the entire Morales family. Miguel had survived a minor heart attack at 65, leading to a renewed focus on health throughout the family. It seemed perfectly reasonable that Daniel would finally prioritize fitness. What didn't make sense, I realized too late, was why these early morning workouts never showed in his fitness tracking app, which we'd previously shared to motivate each other. Then came the late nights at the office that started in January. Morales Developments was indeed expanding into new markets, and as marketing director, Daniel was central to these efforts. His team had grown from 3 people to 8 in just 2 years, with Rebecca joining as his coordinator in October. When he started coming home after 9 p.m. twice a week, sometimes smelling faintly of an unfamiliar perfume, I told myself it was from the office's close quarters. When he began missing Liam's bedtime story, a sacred ritual since our son was born, I reminded myself that his work supported our family, that these sacrifices were temporary. "The Chicago market is complicated," he'd explain, loosening his tie as he slipped into bed beside me, long after I'd tucked Liam in. "Rebecca's connections there are proving invaluable, though." The name began appearing in our conversations with increasing frequency. Rebecca suggested this restaurant for a client meeting. Rebecca found this incredible marketing agency. Rebecca's analysis showed promising demographics in the Gold Coast neighborhood. At a company holiday party in December, I'd finally met her. Tall, poised, and impossibly put together in a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She'd greeted me with practiced warmth, her handshake firm. "Olivia, I've heard so much about you," she'd gushed, her eyes quickly assessing me from head to toe. "Daniel talks about you and Liam constantly." I'd noticed how she touched Daniel's arm when she laughed at his jokes, the way her body angled toward him in group conversations. But I'd dismissed my discomfort as insecurity. After all, I was the one wearing the Morales family diamond, the one raising Daniel's son, the one who had built a life with him. Rebecca was just a colleague. Ambitious, yes, but ultimately just another employee trying to impress the bosses. In February, Daniel's business trips became more frequent. A weekend conference in Phoenix, a 3-day meeting in Seattle, a week-long market research trip to Chicago. Each time, his texts became less frequent, his calls shorter. When I called unexpectedly one evening during his Chicago trip, I heard restaurant noise in the background and a woman's laugh, quickly muffled. "Sorry, bad connection," he'd said, his voice tight. "In a work dinner with the team. Can I call you back after?" He never did. I fell asleep waiting, telling myself he must have been exhausted from networking. For Valentine's Day, he sent an enormous flower arrangement to my office, roses and lilies, professionally arranged with a card that read, "To my incredible wife. Thank you for understanding the demands of building our future. All my love, Daniel." My colleagues had oohed and awed, while I couldn't shake the feeling that the gesture felt impersonal, like something delegated to an assistant. My closest friend, Sophia, had voiced concerns during our monthly lunch in March. "Have you noticed anything off about Daniel lately?" she'd asked carefully, stirring her iced tea. "Carlos mentioned he saw him at Vela's last week with a blonde woman. They looked close." Vela's was an upscale restaurant downtown, known for its intimate atmosphere and discreet private dining areas. Not the kind of place you'd take a colleague for a casual work dinner. "It was probably Rebecca, his new marketing coordinator," I'd replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "They're working on the Chicago expansion together. Miguel has them collaborating on some big presentation." Sophia had given me a long look but dropped the subject. I'd changed the topic to Liam's upcoming school play, pushing away the knot forming in my stomach. By April, Daniel and I were like ships passing in the night. My own security consulting business had picked up significantly after I'd helped a high-profile tech CEO recover from a sophisticated phishing attack. I was working longer, hours, often solving complex security problems, while Daniel was supposedly doing the same with marketing challenges. We functioned as co-parents and roommates more than partners, efficient but distant. "We need to reconnect," I'd said one rare Sunday afternoon when we were both home. Liam was at a playdate, giving us a few hours alone. "Maybe we could plan a weekend away? Just the two of us?" Daniel had looked up from his phone. He was always on his phone these days, and smiled distractedly. "That sounds great, babe. Let me check my calendar and get back to you." He never did. When I brought it up again 2 weeks later, he'd claimed the Chicago project was at a critical stage. "Maybe in the summer, after the family reunion," he'd suggested. "Dad's counting on me to nail this expansion." The most glaring warning sign came in May when I discovered Daniel had opened a separate bank account. I'd been preparing our tax documents when I noticed a statement from a bank we didn't use. The account had been opened in January with a substantial initial deposit from our joint savings. Monthly transfers had followed, steadily draining funds. I thought we were saving for Liam's education and our retirement. When confronted, Daniel had a ready explanation. "It's a special investment account. Dad's financial advisor recommended it. Better returns than our regular savings." I was going to surprise you when it had grown enough to really show results. I'd wanted to believe him. After all, the Morales family had built their fortune through savvy investments. It made sense that Miguel would guide his son toward financial growth opportunities. Still, the secrecy bothered me. We had always made financial decisions together. "Next time, I'd appreciate being included in these decisions," I'd said. "Even if it's meant as a surprise." "Of course," he'd agreed easily. "I should have told you. It won't happen again." Another red flag appeared during Liam's preschool graduation in early June. Daniel had promised to be there, front row, camera ready. Instead, he'd texted 30 minutes before the ceremony. "Emergency at the office. Can't make it. Take lots of pictures." I'd sat alone among the pairs of proud parents, filming Liam receiving his little diploma and searching for his father's face in the audience. The disappointment in my son's eyes when he realized Daniel wasn't there had broken my heart. That night, after Liam was asleep, I'd checked our home security system, a habit from my professional life that occasionally spilled into my personal one. The camera at our front door showed Daniel arriving home at 1:17 a.m., tie loosened and hair disheveled. As he fumbled with his keys, a text notification lit up his phone screen. Though the camera's resolution wasn't high enough to read the message, his smile as he read it was unmistakable. Not the expression of someone who'd been dealing with a work emergency for the past 12 hours. Still, I'd said nothing the next morning. Instead, I'd shown him the video of Liam's graduation performance, pretending not to notice when he checked his phone 3 times during the 2-minute clip. The most damning warning sign came just last week, 7 days before the family reunion. I'd been using Daniel's laptop to order a special frame for the family photo we'd be taking in Aspen, a gift for Miguel and his wife Elena. Daniel had left his email open and a message from Rebecca with the subject line, "Flight confirmation," caught my eye. I shouldn't have opened it. I'd always respected Daniel's privacy. But something, intuition perhaps, or the accumulation of all these small inconsistencies, made me click. The email contained 2 first-class tickets to Chicago, departing 3 days after the family reunion. The names on the reservations: Daniel Morales and Rebecca Winters. The return date was 3 weeks later, exactly 1 day after the Morales family's annual profit-sharing disbursement would hit Daniel's account. Even then, I'd tried to find an innocent explanation. Perhaps they were traveling for the expansion project. Perhaps the timing with the profit sharing was coincidental. Perhaps there was still a way to salvage what we'd built together. I closed the email and shut the laptop, deciding to wait until after the reunion to confront him. The Morales family gathering was stressful enough without adding marital drama. Miguel's health was still fragile. Elena had worked for months planning every detail, and Liam was excited about spending time with his cousins. I told myself I was being considerate, putting family peace above my suspicions. In reality, I was afraid. Afraid of what a confrontation would reveal. Afraid of what it would mean for Liam. Afraid of how the powerful Morales family would react if their golden son's marriage imploded publicly. So I'd packed our bags for Aspen, helped Liam practice his part in the award ceremony, and pretended everything was normal. I'd even made love to Daniel the night before we left, desperately searching his eyes for the man I'd married 8 years ago. I didn't find him. Instead, as Daniel drifted to sleep beside me, his phone had buzzed on the nightstand. A text from RW simply read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. I'll make the wait worth it." I'd turned away, tears sliding silently onto my pillow, finally accepting what I'd known subconsciously for months. My husband was planning to leave me. He just wanted his family's money first. And now, watching him accept the Family Man of the Year award, I realized all those warning signs hadn't been warnings at all. They'd been opportunities I'd missed to take control of the narrative, to protect myself and Liam, to prepare for what was coming. I wouldn't miss this opportunity. Not today. Not anymore. The grand dining hall of the Morales Mountain Lodge buzzed with anticipation as family members and business associates took their seats. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the rustic wooden beams and stone fireplace, an elegant contrast to the rugged mountain landscape visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. The space had been transformed for the ceremony, with rows of chairs facing a small stage where Miguel Morales stood adjusting the microphone, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his custom suit impeccable despite the casual mountain setting. Sat in the front row, Liam fidgeting beside me in his miniature suit, clutching the small velvet box containing his father's award. Elena, Daniel's mother, leaned over to smooth Liam's hair. "Isn't this wonderful?" she whispered, her eyes bright with pride. "Daniel has worked so hard for this recognition. And you've been such a supportive wife, Olivia. The perfect Morales partner." I managed a tight smile, wondering what Elena would think of her perfect son if she knew what I'd discovered. Would she blame me, as wealthy mothers-in-law often do, when their sons stray? Or would she be as devastated as I was by Daniel's betrayal of everything the Morales family claimed to stand for? "We're so proud of him," I replied automatically, the words tasting bitter. The truth was, I felt exposed and vulnerable in a way I never had before. For years, I'd believed I was building something real with Daniel, a partnership based on shared values and mutual respect. Now I realized I'd been living in a carefully constructed illusion, one that Daniel was preparing to shatter on his own terms and timeline. As a security consultant, I was trained to identify vulnerabilities in systems and protect against exploitation. Yet I'd failed to secure the most important system in my life, my marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat surrounded by the Morales family, all of them unaware that their golden son had already calculated the exact value of betraying them. "And now," Miguel's voice boomed through the speakers, pulling me from my thoughts, "it is my great honor to present this year's Family Man of the Year award. This recognition goes to the Morales who best exemplifies our core values of integrity, commitment, and dedication to family." The crowd applauded politely as Miguel adjusted his bolo tie, identical to the one Liam wore, and continued. "When Elena and I created this award 5 years ago, we wanted to establish a tradition that would remind each generation what matters most. Success in business is important, yes. Financial security, of course. But without family, without the bonds that tie us to something greater than ourselves. What does any of it mean? More applause, more earnest nodding from relatives who had flown in from across the country for this celebration. I scanned the room, noting Daniel's Aunt Isabella dabbing at her eyes, his cousin Marco recording the speech on his phone, business associates from Morales Developments leaning forward attentively. Everyone was focused on Miguel, except for Daniel, who kept glancing between his father and his phone, which he held low in his lap beneath the tablecloth. I knew exactly who he was messaging, and that knowledge gave me both my greatest vulnerability and my greatest opportunity. This year's recipient, Miguel continued, his voice thick with emotion, has demonstrated exceptional commitment to our family values while expanding our business legacy. He has balanced the demands of a growing career with the responsibilities of fatherhood and marriage. He has shown that success doesn't require sacrificing what truly matters. The dramatic irony was almost too much to bear. I felt Liam squirm, with excitement beside me, eager for his part in the ceremony. My son, our son, who adored his father with the pure, uncomplicated love that only children can offer. Liam, who would be devastated if Daniel followed through on his plan to start a new life in Chicago, returning to Denver only for obligatory holiday visits and alternate weekends as outlined in the custody arrangement I'd found drafted in his email. And so, Miguel said, building toward his conclusion, it is with immense pride that I announce this year's Family Man of the Year, my son, Daniel Morales. The room erupted in applause as Daniel rose from his seat at the side of the stage, buttoning his jacket and plastering on his most charming smile. The same smile that had once made my heart race, now revealing itself as just another tool. In his arsenal of manipulation, he embraced his father firmly, clapping him on the back before taking the microphone. "Thank you, Dad," Daniel began, his voice carrying the practiced sincerity of a man who had spent years in marketing. "This means more than I can express." As Daniel launched into his speech about family legacy and commitment, I felt a moment of paralyzing doubt. Was I really going to do this? Expose him in front of everyone he cared about impressing? Create a scene that would inevitably affect Liam, who was now beaming up at his father from our front row seats. My phone vibrated in my clutch, a calendar reminder I'd set earlier. It read simply, "Rebecca video call, 2:30 p.m. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. According to their messages, Rebecca was waiting in her hotel room just 15 minutes from the lodge, where she'd spent the previous night with my husband, while I'd told Liam that Daddy had to finish some work in town. They had arranged for a video call during a break in the ceremony, their usual check-in during family events. Daniel was now deep into his acceptance speech, gesturing expansively as he talked about the importance of putting family first. Behind him, a large projection screen displayed a slideshow of family photos, Daniel coaching Liam's soccer team, Daniel and me on our wedding day, Daniel helping his father break ground on their newest development project. The slideshow had been my contribution to the ceremony, requested by Elena weeks ago. What the Morales family didn't know was that I had modified the presentation file this morning, embedding a trigger that would activate when I sent a specific command from my phone. "Family isn't just about sharing a name or DNA," Daniel was saying, his eyes misting perfectly on cue. "It's about showing up every day, making sacrifices, and always remembering what truly matters." I felt something break inside me, the last thread of hope that perhaps I'd misunderstood, that there was an explanation that wouldn't destroy our family. But watching him perform this role so convincingly while planning to abandon us made the decision crystal clear. "Liam," I whispered to my son, "Grandma Elena has a special surprise for you in the kitchen. Why don't you go find her?" "But I'm supposed to give Daddy his award," Liam protested, clutching the velvet box tighter. "I know, sweetheart, but Grandma said it's important. I'll make sure you don't miss your part." Elena had mentioned earlier that the chef had prepared special desserts shaped like tiny trophies for the children. It wasn't a lie, exactly, but the timing was intentional. I needed Liam out of the room for what came next. With a reluctant nod, Liam slipped from his seat and headed toward the kitchen door at the back of the dining hall. I watched until he disappeared around the corner, then turned my attention back to Daniel, who was building toward the emotional climax of his speech. "My wife, Olivia," he said, gesturing toward me with a warm smile that didn't reach his eyes, "has been my partner in every sense of the word. Without her support and understanding, I couldn't dedicate myself to our family business the way I have." The crowd turned to look at me, smiles and approving nods all around. I forced myself to smile back, even as I discreetly unlocked my phone beneath the tablecloth. "And my son, Liam," Daniel continued, scanning the crowd with a momentary flash of confusion when he didn't spot our son in the front row. "He is my greatest achievement, my legacy beyond buildings and business deals." It was time. As Daniel spoke about legacy and future generations, I opened the remote access app on my phone, the same one I used to help clients secure their systems. With a few quick taps, I connected to the lodge's multimedia system, which controlled both the slideshow and the video conferencing setup the Morales family used for their business meetings. The vulnerability in their system wasn't technical, but human. Miguel had insisted that I set up the entire system last year, proud that his daughter-in-law's expertise could keep the family on the cutting edge. The passwords were still the same, the access points unchanged. Daniel had never bothered to learn how any of it worked, confident that technology would simply bend to his will when needed, just like people seem to. "As I accept this honor," Daniel said, his voice rising with practiced emotion, "I want to reaffirm my commitment to the Morales legacy and values." My finger hovered over the execute button. One press and everything would change. I thought of Liam, safely out of the room. I thought of the years I'd devoted to this family. I thought of the apartment listings in Chicago and the draft divorce papers. "I promise to always put family first," Daniel declared, raising his glass for a toast. I pressed the button. The slideshow behind Daniel flickered momentarily, then changed from a family photo to a video call connecting screen. Daniel, facing the audience, didn't notice the change immediately. A soft ping announced the connected call, and suddenly, Rebecca Winter's face filled the massive screen behind my husband. She was lying on what appeared to be a hotel bed, her blonde hair artfully tousled, wearing a silk robe that revealed more than it concealed. Her expression was sultry until she registered that she wasn't on a private call with Daniel, but broadcasting to an entire room of people. "Hey, handsome," she purred, before her eyes widened in horror. "I've been counting down the minutes until..." The room fell silent. Daniel, hearing her voice, froze mid-gesture, then slowly turned to see his mistress displayed on the massive screen behind him. The color drained from his face as he stood paralyzed, champagne glass still raised. Rebecca's voice continued, now panicked. "What's happening? Daniel, who are all those people?" Miguel was the first to react, rising from his seat with a thunderous expression. "Daniel, what is the meaning of this?" I stood calmly, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "I believe your son's mistress is confused about the timing of their call. Perhaps he should explain their plans to move to Chicago next week, or the resignation letter he's drafted, or how he planned to ask for a divorce right after receiving his share of the family profits." Rebecca, finally understanding the situation, disconnected the call, but the damage was done. The screen reverted to the slideshow, now displaying screenshots I'd taken from Daniel's messages. Hotel confirmations, flight bookings, apartment listings in Chicago. The room erupted in chaos. Elena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Miguel's face turned an alarming shade of red as he stepped toward his son. Business associates exchanged shocked glances, already calculating how this scandal might affect their investments. Daniel turned to me, his face contorted with fury and humiliation. "You had no right," he hissed, loud enough for the front row to hear. "Neither did you," I replied simply, gathering my purse. "But unlike you, I won't be taking anything that doesn't belong to me when I leave. You can keep the Morales name. I'll keep my dignity." As I turned to walk away, I spotted Liam peeking around the kitchen door, confusion written across his small face. I hadn't meant for him to witness any of this, but the universe rarely provides perfect timing. I walked quickly to him, kneeling to his level. "Mommy, why is everyone yelling? Is Daddy in trouble?" he asked, his lower lip trembling. "Sometimes. Grown-ups make mistakes, sweetheart," I said, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "Right now, we need to give Grandpa and Daddy some time to talk. How about we go for a walk to that ice cream place we saw in town?" As I led Liam toward the exit, I heard Miguel's voice booming behind us, decades of patriarchal authority condensed into a single command. Everyone out. Family only. The vulnerability I'd felt had transformed into something else entirely. A strange, calm clarity. By exposing Daniel's betrayal, I'd seized control of a narrative he'd planned to dictate on his terms. The cost was high. The security of the Morales name, the stability Liam had known. But continuing the charade would have cost far more. Outside in the mountain air, holding my son's hand as we walked away from the lodge, I realized that sometimes our greatest vulnerability, loving someone enough to be devastated by their betrayal, can become our greatest opportunity for truth, growth, and ultimately, freedom. The aftermath was immediate and explosive. As Liam and I reached the lodge's massive front doors, I heard glass shattering behind us, likely Daniel's champagne flute hitting the stone fireplace. I quickened our pace, guiding Liam onto the wraparound porch with its breathtaking view of the Aspen Mountains. The beauty of the landscape felt surreal against the ugliness of what had just transpired inside. "Olivia! Wait!" Elena's voice called from behind us. Daniel's mother hurried through the doors, her perfectly coiffed hair now slightly disheveled, her usually composed face flushed with emotion. I hesitated, my hand on Liam's shoulder. I hadn't planned what to say to Elena, hadn't actually planned anything beyond exposing Daniel's betrayal. "Liam, honey?" Elena said, kneeling to my son's level despite her expensive dress. "Would you do Grandma a big favor? Cousin Sophia is looking for you in the game room. Can you go find her while I talk to your mommy for a minute?" Liam looked up at me questioningly. I nodded, watching as he ran around the side of the lodge toward the separate wing where the children usually played during family gatherings. When he was out of earshot, Elena straightened, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. "Is it true?" she asked simply, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I replied, refusing to elaborate or defend the evidence everyone had just witnessed, firsthand. Elena closed her eyes briefly, the lines around them suddenly more pronounced. When she opened them again, they held a mixture of pain and resignation that suggested she wasn't entirely surprised. "Miguel is—" She trailed off, glancing back toward the dining hall. "Well, you can imagine. He's having the staff clear everyone out, the non-family guests at least." She took a deep breath. This award was his idea, you know. His way of acknowledging that Daniel was finally becoming the man he hoped his son would be. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I need to take Liam away from here for a while," I said. "He doesn't need to witness what's happening." Elena nodded, then surprised me by taking my hands in hers. Daniel has always been like his father in many ways. The charm, the ambition. Her grip tightened slightly. Unfortunately, also the wandering eye. Miguel had his indiscretions when the children were young. I chose to look the other way for the sake of the family name, the business, the children. I stared at her, processing this unexpected revelation. It explained so much about the Morales family dynamics. The emphasis on appearances, Elena's seemingly unconditional support of her husband, the pressure on Daniel to maintain the family image above all else. "I'm not you, Elena," I said gently, withdrawing my hands. "No," she agreed with a sad smile. "You're stronger than I was. But consider what you're walking away from. The Morales name carries weight. Liam's future is exactly why I can't stay," I finished for her. "I won't teach my son that betrayal is acceptable as long as it's discreet, or that women should sacrifice their dignity for social standing." A commotion from inside interrupted our conversation. Raised voices, then the unmistakable sound of Miguel's thundering command. Elena winced. "You should know," she said quickly, "that your actions today will have consequences. Miguel doesn't forgive public humiliation. And while I understand why you did what you did," she glanced toward the game room where Liam had disappeared. "Children often bear the brunt of adult conflicts." It was a warning, not so subtly veiled, as concern. "Are you suggesting the Morales family would punish a 5-year-old boy for his mother's actions?" I asked, my voice hardening. "Of course not," Elena replied quickly. "But access to certain opportunities might become complicated. Daniel will still be Liam's father, regardless of what happens between you two." The doors behind Elena burst open, and Daniel stormed onto the porch. His perfect appearance was now disheveled, tie loosened, a red mark blooming on his cheek that suggested Miguel's response had been physical as well as verbal. "You've destroyed everything," he spat, ignoring his mother completely. "Was that your plan? To humiliate me in front of my entire family? My father's business associates?" "Daniel." Elena attempted to intervene, placing a restraining hand on her son's arm. He shook her off. "Not now, Mom." His eyes never left mine, blazing with a fury I'd never seen before. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Those investors were crucial to the Chicago expansion. My father's blood pressure is apparently less important than your mistress's hotel room schedule," I cut in, refusing to be intimidated. "Don't try to make this about your family's health or business, Daniel. This is about your choices." "My choices?" He laughed bitterly. "What about yours? You invaded my privacy, accessed my personal communications, and broadcast them without consent. That's not just a betrayal. It's potentially illegal. I could sue you for this." "By all means," I replied calmly. "I'm sure a public lawsuit detailing your infidelity and plans to embezzle company funds would go over wonderfully with the Morales family reputation. Your father would love seeing those details in court records." Daniel's face contorted with rage, but Elena stepped between us before he could respond. "Enough," she hissed. "Both of you. This isn't the place." She glanced meaningfully toward the game room. "There are children who can hear you. The mention of Liam seemed to penetrate Daniel's anger. He ran a hand through his hair, his breathing still ragged but his voice lowered. "We're not done with this conversation," he said. "But right now, I need to do damage control with my father." "Your father has dismissed everyone except family," Elena informed him. "He's waiting in his study. The investors—" "I know, Mom. I'll handle it." Daniel straightened his tie, the marketing executive reasserting control over the humiliated husband. Before turning to leave, he fixed me with a cold stare. "Don't leave the property with my son. We need to discuss arrangements." "Arrangements?" I echoed. "Custody. Separation terms. Unless you think your little display in there has somehow improved our marriage." The casual cruelty of his tone confirmed what I already knew. Whatever love had existed between us was gone, if it had ever been real at all. "I'll be at the guest house with Liam," I said. "Send your lawyers if you prefer. I have nothing to say to you directly." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more, disappearing back into the lodge. Elena lingered, looking suddenly older than her 60 years. "The guest house is prepared," she said quietly. "I'll have some food sent over for you and Liam." She hesitated. For what it's worth, Olivia, I'm sorry. No one deserves what Daniel did to you. As Elena followed her son inside, I remained on the porch, the magnitude of what had just happened finally hitting me. I had exposed Daniel's betrayal. Yes, but in doing so, I had also detonated my life as I knew it. The comfortable future I'd imagined, the extended family Liam adored, the security of the Morales name and resources, all of it was now uncertain. I walked slowly toward the game room, trying to compose myself before facing Liam. Through the window, I could see him playing a board game with his cousin Sophia, blissfully unaware that his world had just been fundamentally altered. The innocence of their laughter made my throat tighten with emotion. Mrs. Morales? I turned to find Carlos, the lodge's longtime caretaker, standing respectfully a few feet away. His weathered face registered no reaction to the drama that had unfolded, though he had undoubtedly heard about it already. Nothing stayed secret for long among the staff who had served the Morales family for generations. Mr. Miguel asked me, "To inform you that your bags have been moved to the guest house," he said, "and to offer you the use of the Range Rover if you need to. Go into town for anything." The subtext was clear. Miguel was simultaneously ensuring I had somewhere to stay and providing a means for me to leave the property if needed. Whether this was an act of consideration or a way to remove me from the main lodge, I couldn't be sure. "Thank you, Carlos," I replied. "Would you mind watching Liam for a moment? I need to make a phone call." He nodded solemnly. "Of course, señora. Take your time." I stepped away from the game room, pulling out my phone and dialing Sophia. "My closest friend back in Denver," she answered on the second ring. "Liv? How's the reunion going? Has Daniel gotten his big award yet?" "Sophia," I said, my voice finally breaking. "Everything's fallen apart. Daniel's been having an affair with Rebecca from work. They've been planning to leave for Chicago after he gets his profit share. I found everything on his watch and I exposed him in front of the entire family during the ceremony." There was a moment of stunned silence then. "Holy shit, Liv. Are you okay? Is Liam okay?" "Liam doesn't know yet. I took a deep breath. "I'm not sure what happens next. Daniel is threatening legal action. His mother is warning me about consequences. I'm currently exiled to the guest house while the family deals with the fallout." "That manipulative bastard," Sophia hissed. "Threatening you after what he did? Classic narcissist move. Listen to me, Liv. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't let them intimidate you. The Morales family might have money and connections, but you have the truth on your side. And me. And my brother, the divorce attorney, who, might I remind you, specializes in high-profile cases." Her fierce loyalty steadied me. "I might need to take you up on that offer." "Consider it. Done. Do you want me to come get you? I can be in Aspen in 4 hours." I considered it briefly, imagining the relief of escaping with Liam, returning to the safety of my own home in Denver. But running now would only make things more complicated legally. Not yet, I decided. I need to handle this properly for Liam's sake. Daniel is still his father, and I won't be the one to damage that relationship even if Daniel was willing to. Okay, but I'm on standby. One text and I'm on my way. In the meantime, document everything. Every threat, every conversation. Colorado is an equitable distribution state, and infidelity can impact alimony and property division, especially if he was planning to use company funds. Leave it to Sophia to immediately shift into practical mode. Her brother had handled her own divorce 3 years earlier, securing her a settlement that her cheating ex-husband's powerful family had initially tried to prevent. "I will," I promised. "I should go. Liam will be wondering where I am." "Liv," Sophia said before I could hang up, "what you did took incredible courage. Don't let them make you doubt yourself." As I ended the call, I noticed movement at the main lodge's front entrance. Several guests were leaving, escorted by staff members. Miguel had clearly wasted no time clearing out witnesses to the family scandal. Among them was Henderson Williams, CEO of a major development company and potential investor in the Chicago project Daniel had mentioned so often. Even from a distance, the stiff set of his shoulders communicated disapproval. The enormity of what I'd done continued to unfold. I had not only exposed Daniel's personal betrayal, but potentially damaged business relationships worth millions. The rational part of me knew these were consequences of his actions, not mine. Yet the weight of responsibility still pressed on me as I watched the fallout spread like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. I squared my shoulders and headed toward the game room. Whatever came next, I would face it with the same clarity and courage that had allowed me to expose the truth. For Liam's sake, and for my own. As I reached the game room door, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. Tear-streaked but composed, vulnerable, yet resolute. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. She was someone new, someone forged in the white-hot heat of betrayal and its aftermath. She was someone who refused to look the other way. The Morales family guest house was a testament to what the family considered modest accommodations. A 2-bedroom cabin with vaulted ceilings, a stone fireplace, and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the mountains. Under different circumstances, I might have appreciated its rustic luxury. Tonight, it felt like a beautiful prison. "Mommy, why aren't we staying in the big house with everyone else?" Liam asked as I tucked him into bed. His Spider-Man pajamas were a stark contrast to the handcrafted quilt that probably cost more than a month of my mortgage payments. Is it because Daddy and Grandpa were fighting? Children missed nothing, even when adults thought they were being discreet. I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups need space when they're upset with each other," I explained, smoothing his dark curls away from his forehead. "Daddy and Grandpa have some things to work out, and it's better if we give them room to do that." "Is it because of the lady on the big screen?" Liam persisted. "Sophia said it was Daddy's girlfriend, but that doesn't make sense because you're Daddy's wife." My heart sank. So much for shielding him from the family drama. I should have known the children would discuss what they'd glimpsed before being ushered away. "That's something Daddy and I need to talk about," I said, not quite answering his question. "But I want you to know that no matter what happens between me and Daddy, we both love you very much. That will never change." Liam studied my face with the solemn intensity only children can manage. "Are you and Daddy getting a divorce like Tommy's parents?" The directness of his question caught me off guard. Tommy was Liam's classmate, whose parents' messy divorce had been the subject of kindergarten gossip for months. "I don't know yet, sweetheart," I said honestly. "But if that happens, it won't be like Tommy's parents. You won't have to choose sides or carry messages between us. I promise." It was a promise I intended to keep, regardless of how ugly things might get with Daniel. Liam deserved parents who could set aside their own hurt for his well-being. "Okay," he said, his eyelids growing heavy. "Can we still go fishing with Grandpa tomorrow? He promised to show me where the big trout hide." "We'll see," I said, knowing that Miguel's annual fishing trip with the grandchildren was likely the least of the family traditions disrupted by today's events. "Get some sleep now. I love you to the moon and back. And to the stars and beyond." Liam finished our nightly ritual, his voice already fading as sleep claimed him. I sat beside him until his breathing deepened, then quietly left the room, leaving the door cracked open. In the guest house's main area, I poured myself a generous glass of the Cabernet that Elena had thoughtfully included with the dinner tray sent over earlier. The food remained untouched. My appetite had vanished somewhere between the slideshow revelation and Daniel's threats. My phone buzzed with another text from Sophia. "Talk to Max. He can see you Monday morning, 9 a.m. Document everything. Call me if you need backup." I sent a quick thank you, grateful for her unwavering support and her brother's legal expertise. As I took a sip of wine, a sharp knock at the door made me jump slightly, wine sloshing over the rim of my glass. Through the window, I could see Daniel standing on the porch, his posture rigid. Part of me wanted to ignore him, to delay the inevitable confrontation until I'd had time to process everything. But avoiding problems had never been my style, and putting this off wouldn't make it easier. I set down my glass and opened the door, but blocked the entrance. "Liam is asleep," I said by way of greeting. Daniel looked different somehow. His usual confident demeanor replaced by something harder, colder. His eyes were slightly bloodshot, suggesting either tears or alcohol, possibly both. "We need to talk," he said, his voice clipped. "I told you to send your lawyers. This isn't about lawyers. Yet." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache despite everything. "Can I come in, or would you prefer to have this conversation where the staff can hear?" I stepped aside reluctantly, allowing him to enter but keeping my distance. He paced the small living area like a caged animal, reminding me disconcertingly of his father. "My father has temporarily suspended me from the company," he said without preamble. "The Chicago expansion has been put on hold. 2 investors have already pulled out, citing concerns about leadership stability." His bitter laugh held no humor. "Congratulations, Olivia. You've managed to damage not just our marriage, but my entire career in one fell swoop." "I didn't destroy your career, Daniel. You did that when you decided to betray your family and steal company clients." I kept my voice level, refusing to match his angry tone. "What did you expect would happen when you got caught?" "That's just it. I didn't expect to get caught like this." He gestured expansively. "If you had concerns, you could have talked to me privately. We could have handled this like adults, not with some vindictive public spectacle." The audacity of his response was breathtaking. "Handled it like adults? You mean like how you were planning to handle divorcing me after securing your profit share? Or how you and Rebecca were planning to poach your family's clients?" I crossed my arms. "The time for private conversations passed when you started planning your exit behind my back." Daniel at least had the decency to look momentarily ashamed, but it quickly hardened into defensiveness. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. My father's expectations, the company's expansion goals, trying to be everything to everyone." He trailed off, perhaps realizing how hollow his excuses sounded. "I've been under the same pressure to balance career and family," I pointed out. "Somehow I managed without starting a relationship with a colleague or plotting to abandon my child." He flinched at that. "I wasn't abandoning Liam. The custody arrangement that you drafted without my knowledge or input," I interrupted. "Every other weekend and holidays when convenient? While you started a new life in Chicago? That's your definition of not abandoning him?" Daniel ran both hands down his face. When he looked at me again, his anger had transformed into something more calculating. "Look, what's done is done. We need to figure out how to move forward. My father is insisting I make this right somehow." "Make it right?" I repeated incredulously. "There's no making this right, Daniel. Actually, there is." He straightened, slipping into what I recognized as his professional negotiation stance. "We can salvage this situation. For Liam's sake, for the family business, for everyone involved." Something in his tone set off warning bells. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "We tell everyone this was a misunderstanding. That Rebecca is just a colleague who was inappropriately flirtatious, and I handled it poorly but never actually acted on anything physical. We agree to marriage counseling, present a united front at company events for the next 6 months, and then quietly separate with a generous settlement for you." He delivered this proposal as if outlining a business strategy. "You keep your connections to the Morales family. Liam doesn't suffer from a public scandal, and the company avoids further investor concerns." I stared at him, momentarily speechless at the audacity of his proposal. He genuinely expected me to help him save face by pretending his affair and betrayal hadn't happened. "No," I said simply. Daniel blinked, clearly not expecting such a direct rejection. Olivia, be reasonable. Think about what this means for Liam, for your future. I am thinking about Liam. I'm thinking about what kind of example I want to set for him. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I won't pretend your betrayal didn't happen so you can save your reputation and your father's company. I won't model for my son that lies are acceptable if they're convenient, and I certainly won't continue in a marriage that exists only for appearances. You're not considering what you'll be giving up, Daniel warned, his tone hardening. The Morales name opens doors in Denver that would otherwise remain closed. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. My father is furious, Olivia, not just with me, but with how you chose to handle this. There are board members who blame you for potentially damaging the company's reputation and investor relations. The implied threat hung in the air between us. Either I helped repair Daniel's image, or the Morales family would make my life difficult. I think you should leave, I said quietly. It's clear we have nothing more to discuss tonight. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. Rebecca meant nothing to me. It was a mistake, a temporary insanity brought on by pressure and opportunity. We have 8 years of marriage, a son together. Are you really willing to throw all that away? For a moment, I glimpsed the man I'd fallen in love with. Earnest, vulnerable, seemingly sincere. It would be so easy to accept his explanation, to agree to his proposal for Liam's sake, to slip back into the comfortable life we'd built together. But the screenshots on his phone, the apartment listings, the carefully planned exit strategy, told a different story than this sudden contrition. The affair isn't why I'm ending our marriage, I said, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. It's the calculated deception. It's the months of planning your escape while pretending everything was fine. It's that you were willing to discard us when it became inconvenient, but now want us back because it serves your purposes. I moved toward the door, opening it pointedly. I deserve better than being your backup plan, Daniel. And Liam deserves better than a father who sees him as a weekend obligation. Daniel's face darkened. You'll regret this, Olivia. My family can make things very difficult for you professionally. Denver is still a Morales town. Are you threatening my livelihood now? Because your affair and planned desertion weren't enough? I held his gaze steadily. You should know I've already spoken with Sophia's brother Max about representing me. I'm sure he'd be very interested in these threats, especially given the evidence I have of your planned embezzlement. The mention of Max Williams, one of Denver's most feared divorce attorneys, had the intended effect. Daniel stepped back, reassessing. This isn't over, he said finally. I'll see my son tomorrow. We can discuss logistics then. You can. See Liam, but I'll be present for any discussions about our separation, I replied. And you might want to know that he's already asking if we're getting divorced. Your cousin's daughter helpfully informed him that the lady on the screen was Daddy's girlfriend. Guilt flickered across Daniel's face, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him tonight. What did you tell him? The truth, that I don't know what will happen, but that we both love him and will make sure he doesn't get caught in the middle. I held the door wider. Good night, Daniel. After a moment's hesitation, he walked out into the cool mountain night. I closed the door behind him, leaning against it as the adrenaline of confrontation left my system, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Through the window, I watched Daniel stand motionless in the guest house's front yard, illuminated by the porch light, before finally turning and walking toward the main lodge. My phone buzzed with an incoming text. I expected Sophia checking in again, but instead saw a message from an unknown number. This is Rebecca. We need to talk. There's more to this situation than you know. I stared at the message, my mind racing with possibilities. Was this another manipulation? A genuine attempt to explain? A trap set by Daniel to get me to say something incriminating? After careful consideration, I typed a response. I have all the evidence I need. Any further communication should go through my attorney. I blocked the number before she could reply, then turned off my phone completely. Whatever game Rebecca and Daniel were playing, I wanted no part of it. They had orchestrated enough drama in my life already. As I moved to check on Liam, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. Tired, but resolute. The woman looking back at me had changed irrevocably today. She had confronted betrayal, rejected manipulation, and chosen truth over comfort. 4. The first time since discovering Daniel's messages that morning, I felt something close to peace. The road ahead would be difficult, particularly with the Morales family's resources aligned against me. But I would face whatever came with the same clarity that had guided me through this day. Some prices were worth paying for the truth. And some betrayals could never be forgiven, no matter how convenient forgiveness might be. Dawn broke over the Aspen Mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed offensive in their beauty. I hadn't slept more than a few restless hours, my mind replaying yesterday's events on an endless loop. The messages on Daniel's watch, the shocked faces of the Morales family, Rebecca's image on the screen, Daniel's threats, and underneath it all, Liam's innocent question about divorce. I made coffee in the guest house's gourmet kitchen, the routine movements providing small comfort in a world suddenly turned upside down. Through the window, I could see staff members moving around. The main lodge, preparing for another day of what was supposed to be a week-long family celebration. Now it felt more like the aftermath of a natural disaster, with everyone assessing the damage and determining what could be salvaged. My phone, which I'd turned back on while Liam still slept, buzzed with a text from Elena. Miguel would like to speak with you at 10 a.m. I'll watch Liam. No pleasantries, no indication of what this meeting would entail, just a summons from the patriarch, delivered by his dutiful wife. I considered refusing, asserting my independence from Morales' family, dictates, but Miguel controlled resources and connections that could significantly impact Liam's future. Strategic cooperation now might prevent greater battles later. I texted back a simple, okay, and continued sipping my coffee, trying to quiet the anxiety rising in my chest. What would Miguel demand? Would he try to bribe me into silence about Daniel's planned embezzlement? Threaten me with legal action for accessing Daniel's accounts? Demand I participate in some elaborate family-saving charade? Mommy! Liam's voice pulled me from my thoughts. He stood in the doorway of the kitchen, hair tousled from sleep, clutching the stuffed dinosaur he'd recently declared himself too old for, but still kept close at night. I had a bad dream. I set down my coffee and opened my arms. He crawled into my lap, suddenly seeming younger than his 5 years. Want to tell me about it? He nodded against my shoulder. We were at home, but you weren't there, just me and Daddy. And then Daddy left too, and I was all alone in the dark. His small voice trembled. Is Daddy going away? Is that why everyone was yelling yesterday? The simplicity of his question broke something inside me. Children's fears cut straight to the heart of adult complications. Beneath all the business implications and family politics, Liam had distilled the situation to its essence. Would he be abandoned? No, sweetheart, I said, holding him tighter. Daddy and I are having some grown-up problems, but neither of us is going away from you. You will never be alone. Promise? He looked up, his eyes, so like Daniel's, wide and trusting. Promise, I said firmly. No matter what happens between me and Daddy, we will both always be your parents. That never changes. I helped him dress for the day, maintaining a cheerful facade as we discussed whether today would be warm enough for swimming in the lodge's heated pool. By the time Elena arrived to take him to breakfast with his cousins, I had almost convinced myself that we could weather this storm relatively intact. The children are having pancakes in the sunroom, Elena said, her tone carefully neutral as she took Liam's hand. Miguel is waiting for you in his study. I nodded, kissing Liam goodbye, and watching them walk the stone path toward the main lodge. Elena's shoulders were stiff, her usual graceful posture compromised by the weight of family scandal. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy for her, caught between loyalty to her son and her husband, trying to maintain family dignity, while everything crumbled around her. The walk to Miguel's study felt longer than the actual distance. Staff members averted their eyes as I passed, their discomfort palpable. I had transformed overnight from cherished daughter-in-law to family. Pariah, the woman who had exposed the Golden Son's betrayal and potentially damaged the family business. Miguel's study occupied the eastern corner of the lodge, with windows overlooking both the mountains and the lake below. The room was a testament to masculine power. Dark wood, leather furniture, walls adorned with photographs of Miguel with various politicians and business leaders. It was a space designed to intimidate, and I had to remind myself not to be cowed as I knocked on the heavy wooden door. "Enter," came the brusque response. Miguel sat behind his massive desk, silver hair meticulously combed, dressed in a casual yet expensive outfit that managed to convey authority even without a suit and tie. At 65, he remained an imposing figure, the son of Mexican immigrants who had built a real estate empire through relentless work and strategic relationships. Daniel had inherited his father's handsome features, but none of his substance, I realized with sudden clarity. "Olivia." Miguel acknowledged my presence with a slight nod. "Sit." I took the seat across from him, noting that he hadn't risen when I entered, a deliberate breach of the courtesy he normally observed scrupulously. Message received. I was no longer worthy of respect in his eyes. "I assume you know why I've asked you here," he began without preamble. "I can guess," I replied, determined to meet his gaze steadily. Miguel leaned back in his chair, studying me as one might examine an unexpected obstacle in an otherwise clear path. "In 35 years of business, I have learned that most problems can be solved with the right combination of resources and incentives." His accent, usually barely perceptible, became more pronounced with his displeasure. "You have created quite a problem, Olivia." "I think Daniel created the problem when he began an affair and planned to steal from the family company," I countered, keeping my tone respectful but firm. A flash of something, perhaps reluctant approval at my directness, crossed Miguel's face before his expression hardened again. "What happens in a marriage is between husband and wife. What happens in a family business is between family. You chose to make both public matters." After discovering they were already connected, I pointed out. "Daniel and Rebecca were planning to use Morales' clients and resources to start their own venture. Would you prefer I had kept that private until after they succeeded?" Miguel's jaw tightened, confirming my suspicion that Daniel had not fully disclosed the extent of his planned betrayal. "These allegations about company clients aren't allegations," I interrupted, pulling out my phone. "I have screenshots of their entire plan. The clients they approached, the pitch deck they prepared, the timeline for extracting maximum resources before departure. I was going to turn everything over to you today, after the initial shock had passed." I slid the phone across the desk, open to the folder of evidence I'd compiled. Miguel picked it up, his expression darkening as he scrolled through messages, detailing how his son and Rebecca had systematically approached Morales Development's most valuable clients, positioning themselves as the innovative future while subtly undermining the old guard leadership. When he finally looked up, the controlled anger in his eyes was tempered with something else, a weariness that aged him beyond his years. He handed the phone back to me. "Daniel claims you illegally accessed his private accounts," Miguel said, his voice deliberately neutral. "That this evidence was obtained through questionable methods. Daniel synced his accounts across all his devices and never changed his passwords from our wedding date," I replied. As his wife, with his explicit permission to use his devices, there was nothing illegal about my access. But he's welcome to test that theory in court, where this evidence would become public record. It was a calculated risk. I wasn't entirely certain about the legality of my access, but I was betting Miguel wouldn't want to find out in a public forum either. After a long moment, Miguel nodded once, conceding the point. So, we find ourselves in a difficult situation. My son has betrayed both his marriage vows and his family's trust. You have exposed this betrayal in the most public manner possible, potentially damaging our business relationships and certainly damaging the family's reputation. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the lake. Elena tells me you refused Daniel's proposal to manage this situation discreetly. I won't pretend his affair didn't happen to protect his reputation, I confirmed. Or the company's. No, I don't suppose you would. Miguel's tone suggested this was both a character flaw and a point of respect. You've always been principled, Olivia. It's why I approved of you for my son, despite your unconventional career choices. The backhanded compliment stung, but I let it pass. What exactly do you want from me, Miguel? He turned from the window, his expression calculating. What I want is for this situation to disappear. Since that is impossible, I will settle for containment. He returned to his desk, pressing a button on his phone. Send in Martinez. Within moments, a man in an expensive suit entered carrying a leather portfolio. I recognized him as the Morales family's longtime attorney. Ms. Kennedy, Miguel said, deliberately using my maiden name. Mr. Martinez has prepared some documents for your review. Martinez placed the portfolio on the desk and opened it to reveal a thick document. This is a separation agreement and provisional custody arrangement, he explained in the dispassionate tone of a man who had handled countless family disputes. It provides for generous financial support for both you and Liam, with joint custody, favoring Ms. Kennedy's primary residence. I stared at the document, processing the reality that less than 24 hours after exposing Daniel's affair, the Morales family had already prepared legal paperwork to sever me from their lives while maintaining access to Liam. The efficiency was both impressive and chilling. In exchange, Martinez continued, you would agree to a non-disclosure clause regarding the specific circumstances of the separation and any information related to Morales Development's business practices or clients. You want me to sign away my right to speak about Daniel's affair and planned company theft, I translated, while you retain access to my son and distance yourselves from me. Miguel's expression remained impassive. We are offering financial security and an amicable separation, Olivia. Many would consider that generous under the circumstances. The circumstances being that I had publicly humiliated the Morales heir apparent. The implied threat was clear. Refuse this generous offer, and they would use their considerable resources to make the separation far more difficult. I should have felt angry. Instead, a profound sadness washed over me as I realized that even now, the Morales family saw this as a business transaction to be negotiated, a problem to be managed with the right documents and financial incentives. There was no recognition of the human pain involved, my betrayal by a husband I had loved, Liam's confusion and fear, the dismantling of what I had thought was my family. I won't sign anything without my attorney present, I said quietly, and I need time to review any agreement thoroughly. Of course, Martinez replied smoothly. We can schedule a formal meeting when you return to Denver. This is merely a preliminary overview of terms. Miguel watched me carefully. Consider this an opportunity, Olivia. A clean break with dignity and security is preferable to a messy, public battle that would harm everyone involved, especially Liam. His invocation of my son's well-being pushed me over an emotional edge I hadn't realized I was approaching. 8 years of marriage, reduced to a clean break. My son's relationship with his father, formalized in custody percentages. My silence, purchased with financial security. The blithe assumption that I would take their offer rather than fight the mighty Morales family. You know what the worst part is? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. None of you. not Daniel, not Elena, not you, has asked how I feel about discovering my husband's betrayal. No one has acknowledged that beyond the business implications and family reputation, there's a human being who was deeply hurt by someone she trusted completely. Miguel shifted uncomfortably. Emotions weren't part of his business calculations. This isn't just about exposure or revenge or financial settlements, I continued, feeling tears threaten for the first time since discovering the messages. It's about 8 years of my life. It's about explaining to my 5-year-old why his family is falling apart. It's about having to rebuild my entire future because someone I loved was planning to discard me when convenient. Martinez cleared, his throat awkwardly, clearly unprepared for this display of raw emotion in what was supposed to be a straightforward business negotiation. Miguel's expression remained stoic, but something flickered in his eyes. Perhaps recognition of the human cost his son's actions had exacted. "I'll review these documents with my attorney," I said, regaining my composure. "But I want to be clear. I won't be bullied or bribed into an agreement that doesn't fully protect both me and Liam. And no amount of money will purchase my silence about Daniel's planned theft from the family company. That's non-negotiable." I stood to leave, suddenly desperate for fresh air and distance from the suffocating weight of Morales family politics. At the door, I paused, turning back to Miguel. For what it's worth, I never wanted any of this. All I ever wanted was the family I thought we were building together. As I walked out of Miguel's study, the full enormity of what lay ahead crashed over me. I had no illusions about the battle I was facing. The Morales family would use every resource at their disposal to control the narrative and minimize the damage to their business interests. Daniel would likely follow his father's lead, choosing family loyalty over genuine remorse or responsibility. Outside in the crisp mountain air, I finally allowed the tears to come, not just for the marriage I had lost, but for the future I had planned, the family I had believed in, and the painful road ahead for Liam. The emotional fortress I had maintained since discovering Daniel's betrayal crumbled, leaving me raw and exposed. I found myself at the edge of the lake, sitting on a weathered bench where Daniel and I had once watched the sunset during our first family reunion as a married couple. 8 years ago, full of hope and plans for our future together. Now I sat alone, wiping away tears as I faced the reality that everything I had built my life around was gone, replaced by legal documents and calculated settlements. This was the bottom, the moment when the adrenaline of confrontation faded, leaving only the hollow ache of irreversible loss. Whatever came next would require rebuilding from these ashes, finding strength I wasn't sure I possessed. As the mountain breeze dried my tears, I stared out at the tranquil lake, its surface occasionally disturbed by jumping fish or passing ducks. Nature continued its rhythms, indifferent to human drama. Somehow, I would need to find my own rhythm again, not as Daniel's wife or a Morales daughter-in-law, but as Olivia Kennedy, a woman I was only now beginning to rediscover. I don't know how long I sat by the lake, watching sunlight dance across the water as my tears gradually subsided. Time seemed suspended in the aftermath of emotional collapse. It was the vibration of my phone that finally pulled me back to reality, a text from Elena saying Liam was asking for me. As I wiped my face and prepared to return to the lodge, a voice called out from behind me. "Mrs. Morales? Or do you prefer?" "Ms. Kennedy now?" I turned to find Isabella Vega approaching the bench. As Morales Development's chief financial officer and Miguel's niece, Isabella had always been something of an enigma within the family. Brilliant, reserved, and decidedly unmarried, despite the family's traditional expectations. "Olivia is fine," I replied, suddenly conscious of my tear-stained face. Isabella sat beside me without waiting for an invitation, her tailored slacks and crisp blouse immaculate despite the casual setting. At 45, she wore her authority comfortably, her dark hair streaked with distinguished silver. "I'm guessing you just had the pleasure of meeting with Tio Miguel and his legal bulldog," she said, her tone dry. I nodded, unsure why she was seeking me out. Let me guess. Generous financial settlement, ironclad non-disclosure agreement, and just enough custody to keep you tied to family terms while ensuring Liam remains firmly within the Morales orbit. When I looked surprised, she smiled grimly. It's the standard playbook. He used a variation with my sister-in-law when my brother had his indiscretion. Seems like a family tradition, I muttered before I could stop myself. To my surprise, Isabella laughed, a genuine, warm sound at odds with her typically reserved demeanor. More common than anyone acknowledges. The Morales men have a particular talent for combining enormous entitlement with terrible judgment. Her candor was startling. Should you be telling me this? Isabella's expression turned serious. Probably not. But I've worked too long maintaining this family's financial empire to watch it potentially crumble because Daniel couldn't keep his pants zipped. She looked out at the lake. What he and that woman were planning, approaching our clients, planning to use our proprietary development models, it would have done significant damage. You know about that? I'm the CFO. I noticed unusual activity in client communications months ago. Meetings Daniel scheduled that weren't on the official calendar. Expense reports that didn't quite add up. She gave me an appraising look. You just accelerated the timeline rather dramatically. I processed this information, realizing Isabella had been investigating Daniel's business betrayal independently. Miguel didn't seem very concerned about the client theft during our meeting. He focused more on the public embarrassment factor. Isabella sighed. That's because Miguel's primary concern is always family reputation. The business implications will sink in later. She hesitated, studying me carefully before continuing. There's something you should know about Rebecca Winters. My stomach tightened at the name. What about her? She's not just some random employee who caught Daniel's eye. Her father sits on the board of Platinum Capital Partners. The name was familiar from Daniel's business discussions. The investment firm Miguel has been courting for the Chicago expansion? Isabella nodded. An investment firm that controls access to roughly $800 million in development capital. Miguel has been pursuing their partnership for over a year. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. So Daniel's affair with Rebecca was initially encouraged by Miguel as a business strategy, Isabella finished. Not explicitly as an affair, of course, but the directive to cultivate a close relationship with the daughter of a key potential investor. Well, the subtext was clear. I felt physically ill. Miguel knew about them? He knew Daniel was spending time with her. Whether he knew it had become sexual or that they were planning to strike out on their own, that I can't say. Isabella's expression was sympathetic but unflinching. The Morales men have a long history of confusing business relationships with personal ones. The revelation should have hurt more, but instead, I felt an odd sense of clarity washing over me. So when Miguel talks about containing the situation, he's trying to salvage both the family reputation and a potential $800 million investment relationship, Isabella confirmed, which is why I'm here. I don't understand. You have leverage, Olivia, more than you realize. Miguel is offering you terms because he's afraid of what happens if you don't accept them. Not just the public scandal, but the potential loss of the Platinum Capital Partnership. My mind raced with implications. You're suggesting I should use this information to negotiate better terms? I'm suggesting you recognize your position of strength before signing anything. Isabella's voice lowered. The non-disclosure agreement they're pushing, it protects more than just Daniel's reputation. It protects Miguel from any shareholders, discovering that he tacitly encouraged his son to pursue a relationship that has now backfired spectacularly. I stared at her, stunned by both her candor and the complexities she was revealing. Why are you telling me this? Isabella smiled faintly. I've spent 20 years protecting this company's financial interests, sometimes from the very family that owns it. The truth is, I respect what you did yesterday. It took courage. She paused. Also, Liam reminds me of my brother's son before the divorce. That boy deserves better than what I've seen happen to other Morales children caught in these situations. Something about her sincerity broke through my emotional fog, igniting a spark of determination. What would you do in my position? I'd remember that leverage only matters if you're willing to use it. She stood, brushing invisible dust from her slacks. Also, I'd consider talking to Victoria Chen at Westridge Securities. She's been interested in enhanced digital security for their financial clients. Someone with your expertise might find interesting opportunities there. Before I could process this unexpected career lead, Isabella added casually, "And if you happen to be looking for a new place, my building in Cherry Creek has a 3-bedroom opening up next month. The owner is an old friend who might be persuaded to offer favorable terms to the right tenant." With that, she walked away, leaving me to realize that Isabella Vega had just offered me the beginnings of a path forward, professional connections, potential housing, and most importantly, strategic insight into the Morales family dynamics I was navigating. As I watched her retreating figure, a profound shift occurred within me, a turning point from victim to strategist. Until this moment, I had been reacting to Daniel's betrayal, caught in the emotional undertow of discovering my life was built on lies. Now I began to see the bigger picture and my place within it. I wasn't just a wronged wife. I was someone with valuable information, professional skills, and leverage in a high-stakes negotiation. The realization was both empowering and sobering. I hadn't asked for this position, but I would be a fool not to use it to protect myself and Liam. With newfound clarity, I made 3 phone calls that would change the trajectory of everything. That followed. First to Sophia. "I need Max to meet us at the Denver airport tomorrow afternoon. Tell him to bring his most aggressive game plan and to prepare for a negotiation, not a surrender." Second, to Victoria Chen at Westridge Securities. "Ms. Chen, we haven't met, but Isabella Vega suggested I contact you about your digital security needs. I believe I may have solutions that would interest you. Third, to a number I found in Daniel's contacts, George Winters, Rebecca's father and board member at Platinum Capital Partners. Mr. Winters, you don't know me, but I'm Olivia Morales. I think we should discuss what your daughter and my husband have been planning and how Miguel Morales fits into the picture." Each call was brief, professional, and strategic. By the time I walked back to find Liam, I had set in motion forces that would fundamentally shift the power dynamics I was facing. I found my son in the game room, building an elaborate Lego structure with his cousins. "Mommy," he called, spotting me in the doorway. "Look what we built. It's a castle with a moat and a dragon." "It's amazing," I said, kneeling beside him. "You've been very creative." "Can we go see the ducks now? You promised yesterday." The simplicity of his request cemented my new resolve. "Absolutely," I told him. "And maybe get ice cream after?" As Liam cheered and ran to get his jacket, Elena appeared in the doorway. "Miguel mentioned you had a discussion this morning." "We did," I confirmed, not elaborating. "The family has always considered you one of us, Olivia," she said, her voice low. "Despite what's happened, that doesn't have to change." I met her, gaze steadily. "With all due respect, Elena, I think it already has. But that might not be a bad thing, for me or for Liam." Before she could respond, Liam returned with his jacket. "Grandma, we're going to see the ducks. Do you want to come?" Elena's expression softened as she looked at her grandson. "Not today, Carino. But you have fun with your mother." "To me," she added quietly, "Daniel is meeting with the family attorneys this afternoon. Perhaps you could join them to discuss terms." "I've made other arrangements," I replied. "My attorney will be in touch on Monday." The surprise in her eyes confirmed what I already suspected. The Morales family had expected me to fall in line, to accept their terms out of fear or financial necessity. They had gravely miscalculated. The final confrontation came sooner than I expected. Liam and I were feeding the ducks when Daniel appeared on the path, his stance rigid with anger. "Olivia, we need to talk, now." His voice carried the entitled command of a man used to being obeyed. "Liam, sweetie, can you count how many ducklings are in that family over there?" I asked, giving my son a task that would occupy him while keeping him within sight. When he eagerly moved a few yards away, I turned to Daniel. "Unless you're here to discuss Liam's immediate well-being, we have nothing to talk about without lawyers present." Daniel's carefully controlled facade cracked. "You called Rebecca's father? Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you've done?" So George Winters had already contacted him. Good. I simply informed an investor about potential ethical issues within a company he's considering partnering with. As a board member of a financial firm, he has fiduciary responsibilities to be aware of such things. "This isn't a game, Olivia," Daniel hissed, keeping his voice low enough that Liam wouldn't hear. "My father is furious. The platinum deal is potentially off the table, and he's blaming me for all of it." "Actions have consequences," I replied calmly. "Something you might have considered before planning to embezzle from your family company while divorcing your wife." "I wasn't," he began, then stopped, visibly recomposing himself. "Look, we can still fix this, together. My father is willing to significantly improve the terms of the settlement. Full custody shared equally, the house in Denver, a substantial increase in the financial package. I studied my husband, this charming, handsome man I had once built my life around. For a moment, I could almost see what had attracted me 8 years ago. But now I also saw the hollowness behind the facade. "No," I said simply. Daniel blinked, genuinely surprised. "No? Olivia, be reasonable. My father's offering you everything you could want. Except integrity. Except honesty. Except the dignity of not pretending my husband's betrayal was a misunderstanding." I kept my voice level, conscious of Liam still counting ducklings nearby. "And he's not offering everything. He's offering what he thinks will buy my silence and cooperation." "And what exactly do you want?" Daniel demanded, frustration edging into his tone. "I want what I'm entitled to. Half of what we built together during our marriage, including your stake in Morales Developments. I want primary physical custody of Liam with generous visitation for you, because despite everything, you're still his father. I want transparency about the company's dealings with Platinum Capital." Daniel's face paled. "Who told you about Platinum?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is what I do with the information." 6 months later. "Mom, look what I made!" Liam called from his new bedroom, proudly displaying a robot constructed from recycled materials, a school project we'd been working on all weekend. "That's amazing, sweetie," I said, admiring his handiwork while finishing. My morning coffee in our sun-filled Cherry Creek apartment, the one Isabella had mentioned. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria Chen. "Board approved the expanded security protocols. Contract should be in your inbox. Dinner to celebrate?" Smiled, typing back a quick acceptance. The consulting work with Westridge had evolved into a full security partnership, providing both financial stability and professional fulfillment beyond what I'd experienced in years. The final divorce settlement had been signed 3 months earlier, after Miguel Morales realized I wasn't bluffing about my willingness to make Daniel's planned embezzlement public. The terms were fair: primary custody of Liam with generous visitation for Daniel, half of our marital assets, including Daniel's company shares, and no non-disclosure agreement about the circumstances of our separation. Daniel had left Morales Developments, taking a position with a smaller firm in Boulder. According to Isabella, who still provided the occasional family update, he and Rebecca had ended their relationship shortly after the reunion debacle. The Platinum Capital deal had proceeded, but on terms far less favorable to the Morales family than originally planned. "Ready for school?" I asked Liam, helping him carefully pack his robot into a box. "Yep, Is Dad still taking me to soccer tonight? He is. He'll pick you up from Grandma Sophia's after your play date. Co-parenting with Daniel wasn't perfect, but we'd established a functional relationship centered on Liam's well-being. The anger and betrayal hadn't disappeared, but they'd mellowed into something manageable. As we walked to the car, my phone rang with a familiar number, Isabella Vega. "Just checking in," she said when I answered. "The quarterly board meeting is tomorrow. As expected, Miguel is stepping back as CEO. He's announcing interim leadership while the search committee evaluates candidates." "Let me guess, you're on the short list," I replied, having learned enough about Isabella's strategic mind to know she rarely shared information without purpose. "Second on the list, actually, but the first candidate is having second thoughts." Her tone was carefully neutral, but I detected a hint of satisfaction. After dropping Liam off, I took a slight detour on my way to the office, driving past the gleaming Morales Development's headquarters in downtown Denver. The building still bore the family name in imposing letters, a testament to 3 generations of ambition and power. 6 months ago, I had sat in that building's shadow, believing my worth was tied to my connection to the Morales legacy. Now I drove past it without slowing, heading toward my own office where clients valued my expertise rather than my married name. The irony wasn't lost on me. Daniel's betrayal, intended to discard me when convenient, had instead forced me to rediscover my own strength. The woman I was becoming was more authentic, more confident, and ultimately happier than the woman I had been as Mrs. Daniel Morales. As I pulled into my office parking space, I caught sight of my reflection in the rearview mirror. There was no trace of the devastated woman who had sat crying by a mountain lake half a year ago. In her place was someone who had walked through fire and emerged not just intact, but transformed. Sometimes betrayal is the beginning of something better than what was lost. Sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most authentic beginnings. And sometimes, as I had learned, the family you build for yourself becomes stronger than the one that was built for you. The future stretched before me, no longer shadowed by betrayal, but brightened by possibility. Not despite what had happened at that family reunion 6 months ago, but because of it. After all, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's moving forward and building something better than what you lost.